Right, hello. So, in today's video, we're taking a look at MIDINOUS, or MIDINOUS, or however it's pronounced. Now, what is MIDINOUS? Well, it is sold as a non-linear sequencer. It isn't really like any other plugin or DAW I've ever seen, and it was released in 2021 by Nornec, and weirdly, it's on Steam. But anyway, I want to keep this intro short. Importantly, I would like to thank my Patreons. So, to all my Patreons, I really appreciate your support. I'm also really happy that you're all starting to share your music in the chat, and it's just becoming a bit more of a community now, and I really appreciate that. And on that note, as of recording, last week I uploaded a sample pack which was full of Foley and soundscape stuff and blah blah blah. And my point is that my Patreon is $5 a month, and you can get that sample pack there. But you can also get every video file I've ever done, a Patreon exclusive little series I'm doing at the moment, and there will be more of those. Other sample packs, one-to-one help, Max devices, and anyway, the point is you can get everything I've ever done on my Patreon, including a massive chunk of my user library for Ableton. So $5 a month for my Patreon, or you can visit my Gumroad to get that sample pack for £4. Or you don't have to buy it at all, that's fair enough. Anyway, thank you to my Patreons. I also want to mention that of course you don't have to subscribe to my Patreon whatsoever, and just you watching this video and leaving a like or a comment really helps me out quite significantly. So that's also very much appreciated. But let's just get into the video. Right, so I want to talk about some of the basics first. What does MIDINOUS have? When you open up MIDINOUS, it will create some virtual MIDI ports. So by doing this, you can send MIDI to virtually anything. You can send it out to hardware, or you can use it in your chosen DAW instance. We're going to be using it in Ableton. But how do you make music in MIDINOUS? Well, you've got this toolbox here, and I've taken this photo from 1.1.7 manual, and as you can see, we have this little toolbox which, you know, has its basic redo and undo, where it says primary values, channels, and pathway. That just displays the primary values, the channels, and the pathway when you're working on your music. And then obviously you've got quantize, snapping to the grid or a triplet grid, and then you got your clock options down there, and there's also an internal synth which for some reason I couldn't get to work when recording this video, but hey ho, we're using it with Ableton. It doesn't matter too much for this demonstration or jam. But at the top there, the very top, you have three icons with the square, the cross, and the square with the other two little squares. The first box is where you have your MIDI notes or MIDI commands and so on and so on. So let's have a quick look at these. Again, every image is taken from the 1.1.7 manual. So first you have the note block, and that is pretty self-explanatory. It places a note, and then you can go into that note and you can change the pitch value, the velocity, the probability, which channel it's in, the duration, if it will repeat. You can force it to a scale, and then you got this box down here which says relative changes. So for example, if on the note bar, if we took that 0 up to say 2 and then left it at that, that would mean every time that note was hit or triggered, it would go up by 2 semitones. However, we also have this little button here which is random, which kind of then changes how it works. Rather than going up 2 semitones every time it's been hit, it will randomly pick a value within 2 semitones, and then you have these arrows here, and it can randomly pick the value only up, only down, or if you select both arrows, it can work in a bipolar fashion. And again, you've got that for velocity, channel, duration, repeat, and the scale and the root of the scale, which is really, really fun. I should also mention in the note window, we have these three options here for start, mute, and pass. Now start means when you start the transport, a traveler, or I call them in the video an impulse, will come from that note node. A traveler or an impulse will go through the path and then hit the next note. But we have three different path options here. So to connect notes together in MIDINOUS, we need to draw paths between them, which is this second icon here. We have the vertical and horizontal options, or the straight option, which looks like this again from the manual. Now this just kind of changes which way your impulse will be going, and the straight one kind of ignores the grid completely. And then you also have these buttons here which change how the paths work. Now for some reason I couldn't find an explanation on what they are in the manual, but it changes how the impulses come out of their note points and how they go through the paths. So I know the first one is just one point goes out, I believe, the horizontal path. The second one is an impulse will go out of every single path connected. And then the third one is an impulse will go to any random path connected. When you click on a path, you have this little menu come up, and this is our path weighting. So imagine this square is one of our MIDI nodes, and all the boxes with 1 around it are our path connections. You can select different paths and increase the weight of them, which I do in the video to generate this kind of chord trigger thing which comes around every bar. And the final thing I'm going to talk about actually is the CC object. This is as simple as it sounds. You pick a CC control to map it to, and then it sends it. I just want to explain one more thing. In this video, I'm kind of discovering how to use it. So it's more of a jam and explanation of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, rather than an in-depth tutorial, hence why I added this bit at the beginning. So yeah, let's just get into figuring out what to do. This is what we first get when we open up MIDINOUS, or MIDINOUS. And then there's this kind of little tutorial that goes along in paths where you have to scroll to the right, left, or bottom. It's really helpful. I highly recommend you take a look at this. But let's open some presets that have already been made for us. Let's choose this Venus Theory Ambient Web of Doom.
Wow.
So I know that looks pretty nuts, but here we've got a bit of instructions. Channels 1, 2, 3 work best as melodies, and then 4 as bass. So I'm just going to quickly set that up in Ableton. But anyway, then we press play and have a listen. Alright, let's fix that up a little bit and just add in the other instruments and kind of just chuck some reverb in. So yeah, this looks pretty nuts, because it is, but I hope it makes a little bit more sense at the end of the video. But how beautiful is that? Anyway, we are going to just grab a couple of operators and a drum synth kick, and then we're going to start sequencing our own things. So we have these place objects, and we are picking note for now. A lot of these place objects don't have any description in the manual. The manual's a little out of date, and I tried to use one of them later, and it doesn't work. I'm not sure how to use it, so I do apologize. However, we're going to use notes. I'm going to go around in this block because I believe this block is our quarter notes, and then use the wire or path tool, I should say, sorry, to connect all of them. Highlight every single note block. We need to pick MIDI channel 2, and here we're going to change our MIDI channel for all of them. So these should play a 4 on the floor kick drum pattern, hopefully. We also need to have one node be the start. I accidentally have 2 nodes being the start. But there you go. That's how easy it can be. Let's change our tempo a little bit. We are actually going to delete that path and add another note block into the middle of it, and then reconnect them. Then on that middle note block, we are going to change the probability of that note being played. So let's set it to 50. I forgot to set the MIDI channel. But you know, you get the point. You can have note-based probability, which is very nice and very good for a lot of the kind of music you might be making with this program naturally. Anyway, let's create 16 note blocks. So obviously then we have like a 16-step sequencer. Connect all those up. I will fast forward through this, don't worry. And then I'm going to highlight them all, put them onto MIDI channel 3. And then one by one, I'm going to change the note of each block. But there's actually a much easier way of doing that. This box down here, relative changes. We are setting our note to 12, pressing the up arrow so it only changes upwards of our bass note, and making sure that random button in the middle is on. This meaning that from our bass note, it will randomly pick a note 12 semitones up. However, if we don't turn that random button on, it will, as it suggests, be a relative change. So if I just did 2, then leave the random button off and click the up arrow, we would go up 2 semitones with each block. Also, if you want to change the time and make it a bit more funky, it's that easy. You just drag a block and put it somewhere else. You can get some really cool rhythms out of this. Anyway, I fiddle around for a little bit longer, so I'm just gonna skip through that. Until we end up with this. Okay, so over here I'm going to attempt to make a kind of random chord generator thing. So in a linear fashion, I guess, we're going to put down 3 note blocks, and then we're going to select a different path. That one just doesn't follow the grid, so as you can see, it just goes in a straight line. There are a lot of different things with paths. I apologise if I don't explain it too well in this one, but here, one path signal will send out impulses to everything all at once. So this, from our kind of bass middle note there, which is the starting point, yeah, it sent out an impulse for each path, but we need to mute that middle one as well. But obviously it's not going to trigger again now because the kind of path loop is finished. So I'm going to try and build a little, I guess, clock here. And I'm trying to use that counter object. As you can see, it's taking each impulse and counting to 4. I was hoping that once it had reached 4, then it would send out an impulse itself, but it doesn't, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how it's used. It's not in the manual yet. So instead, we're going to use the path weighting. As you can see, there's a little table down here with weight. So we are going to go down from that node 3 times, as I set the weight to 3. And then we should go across on the 4th one. Or so I thought. This should work. Yep, there we go. So using path weighting, we're going to the down path 3 times, and then the left path after the 3 times is finished, if that makes sense. So I'm just remaking some of my synths and stuff. I'm just going to try and build this all again. So this little chord thing is very much the same, but we are going to go up by 2 notes, I think. We're going to make a, another basic triad for now. And we're also going to change our duration so it sustains on those notes for longer. We've also forced it to the D-sharp Dorian scale. And then we're going to build that into the clock this time, and hopefully that will work a little better. There we go. That works perfectly. So now we're going to duplicate that whole shape and connect both sort of clock chord things. And we're just going to arrange them like this because I think that makes sense. And then with this node, we're going to select the random path signal. So it'll have a random chance of whatever path it goes down, whether that's down to our second chord or back up to our first chord. It'll make much more sense when you see it. And also for the second chord, we're making it completely random within 7 semitones, or a fifth if you'd rather call it that. So as you can see, that time the bottom left node selected up, so we're going back to our sort of concrete chord where it won't change with probability. And now it's gone to the left chord, where it selects our probability chord. However, I haven't connected that to go back up to our first box, so I need to do that. But that sounds nice, huh? Alright, so to have it connect back, I thought this would be a good idea, maybe? I apologise for the lag, good God. But what that's done is make it generate more impulses, which can be cool, but that is not what I want. It's getting a little chaotic, especially for, I believe it's a six voice synth. Anyway, so what I did instead was connect them down at the bottom so it either circles its own block or travels back up to the first block. Visually, I think that makes a lot more sense than how I'm explaining it. So the bottom left note block of each square randomly chooses which path to go down. There we go. And then I'm just going to make this extra little crossover here to play some random higher notes. So we are going to have the changes to 2 and then connect that to our chord. So hopefully... Okay, well it set the impulse off in the right direction. However, it's constantly bouncing back and forth between those little notes. And I'm going to chuck it up a few more octaves and connect a few more little bits, especially this last block here, which is a mute block. And I'm making sure that whenever an impulse hits the mute block, it can't go back anywhere else, so it just cuts off that little section of the chord generator. And it seems to be working. I'm just going to fast forward a bit more through here. The only thing I changed there was the block going into those higher notes has a different path setting, so instead of following the grid, it just goes straight to each note block. Anyway, let's just listen for now. As you can see, both those impulses travelled to the mute block, and now we don't have anything else looping within that area of the chord generator. So that's cool. Now I'm just putting blocks down anywhere and randomly and making their duration really long because I'm using this on a mono synth, and it's just going to randomly select notes within the scale. cool way to write some music, right? Also adding a 4/4 block of kick drum notes here. I'm going to do the same here, but with a different note. I'm using a drum rack in Ableton, so this is going to be our snares. And the first and third note block are going to be muted, so we only get a snare on the 2 and 4. How cool is that? Also adding this weird circular 16th thing on the hi-hats, which each note has a probability setting. And then finally, in expression control, I am mapping our mod wheel to an auto filter which is on the master track, just to show you something. So the mod wheel is CC1 in most programs, and in MIDINOUS there is a CC object too, so we're setting it to parameter 1, which is our mod wheel, and our mod wheel in Ableton is mapped to the auto filter on the master track. So here I'm hoping to kind of sweep a filter throughout, and hopefully it works. It takes a little while because I set things up quite poorly. So I'm just switching those around, and I changed the mapping from on-off to the filter frequency. And I'm going to use the slew mode here. So that just kind of puts a ramp in between the on and off, just so it sounds a bit more natural and smoother. If you used Max before, it's like using a ramp smooth or something like that. I don't know. But then the end result is this. I think it's fair to say I have never seen another program which would make me write music in this way. I gotta be honest, it is quite confusing to use, but in a very fun way. Like, I remember when I first started using Max, the learning curve I didn't feel like it was a particularly fun learning curve because I couldn't really get anything done. However, in MIDINOUS it is just quite intuitive and also confusing and also fun. So I'd highly recommend buying a copy and just see what you can get out of it. As you can hear, I've also added a repeat to some of those drum notes. But yeah, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would have gone into more, but sadly the manual isn't currently up to date. So I've used this in the most simple way it can be used, which is still very complicated and fun. There's a lot you can do with very minimal usage of the program. So yeah, see you in a couple of weeks for the next one. Bye.